I'm growing my business. I'm scaling my business. You need to build systems and SOPs for your system. Have you ever heard anyone online ever say any of these things? Well, what does that actually mean? What does it actually mean to grow a business, to scale a business, and to build systems and SOPs? So in today's video, I put together this video to run through exactly what that means. So if you're running a business or you're at 0 clients and you're looking to sign your first client and you're in the act of actually growing your business and building your business, today's video will walk you through exactly what you need to do to grow your business and what exactly that means. So hope you find this video valuable. If you do, make sure you drop me a like, make sure you drop me a subscribe. And if you do have any questions, make sure you pop them inside the comment section. I will read them, I will reply back to you, and hope you find this video valuable today. All right, awesome. So for today, what we're going to talk about is what does it mean to grow your business? Because I'm sure for all the people here, because I know that was me as well, when you guys were, maybe you're on YouTube or something like that, and you're watching people talk about growing the business, and you hear people say, oh, I'm going to scale my business from, I don't know, 10K to 20K, from 20K to 50K. But what does that actually mean, right? So I think the first thing to understand, and this applies, what I'm talking about today applies to everyone here. So whether you are at $0 and you're trying to get your first client, or you have 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients, some of you guys over here are making a few $1,000s and you guys want to get to that next level, depending on what that is, all of this applies. So I think the most important thing to understand about how to effectively build the business, any service business really, is to first understand the theory of constraints. And what that is looking at your business kind of like a system and breaking that down into individual parts and looking at the bottlenecks, if that makes sense. So for example, when you're at 0 and you're trying to get your first client, what is the largest bottleneck? The largest bottleneck is traffic. Because if you're able to get a lot of traffic, you're gonna get your first client like pretty easily, actually, right? You'll get your first few clients relatively easy if you're able to get traffic. So for example, a lot of what we talk about here is using cold emails to generate traffic. If you were to think about it, the cold email aspect of things is a specific system that solves that traffic problem. But then after you solve that traffic problem and you're booking sales calls, let's say on Zoom, on your calendar, the next system is sales, which a lot of people also struggle with, which is I'm booking 10 calls, but I can't close any of them, right? So that is a sales constraint. So if you look at it from that system, the next constraint is sales. After that, it might be client onboarding. It might be service delivery, right? You have a couple clients and you're not easily able to get them really good results right off the bat. What you have now is a constraint on the service delivery, right? And the way it works, the best way to think about growing a business is to always just think about where you're at right now. Similar to what Nelson said earlier, is thinking about what's directly in front of you and what's preventing you or what's stopping you right now from getting to the next level. So I think the first thing before we jump into, because I have a chart, the first thing is understanding what theory of constraints is, right? So at each stage of the business, right? So I actually put this diagram together. If we were to break down this business model, the lead generation agency business model, into phases, I came up with 6 different phases. And again, right, this applies to everyone here, whether you're at 0, whether you're at 10K, 20K, whatever the case is. And the 6 phases is the offer, the marketing, sales, onboarding, service delivery, and feedback. But feedback's not really a phase, right? But that's more so for your own collection of information. And as you are growing your business, what I have found is the best way to focus on growth is to look at each of these phases and create systems that will allow you to get to that next level. So what do I mean by that, right? So, hey, Travis. Okay, so what I mean in terms of systems is when you're first starting out, right? So let's say you are at $0 and you are trying to get to your first clients. Your main constraint is going to be your offer, right? So you're gonna get stuck on figuring out, number one, what niche to sell to. You're gonna get stuck on figuring out if people want what you sell. So obviously everyone here for the most part is selling lead generation or some form of cold emails, right? Obviously that, people want that because, people just want that. But for your clients, or maybe in other business models, you might not necessarily know if people want what you're selling, because that is an offer constraint. So when you're at zero, your number one thing you need to figure out is these two things, right? Who are you selling to? And if people want that thing. Once you solve that offer, your next constraint is most likely going to be, how do I generate traffic onto your business? Now, again, right, everyone here is doing cold emails. So we're using cold emails as a channel to get eyeballs driving onto our business. That's all cold emails is, right? There's a lot of different channels you could use to do that. You could use ads. So if you're running Facebook ads or Google ads, you could use that. You could send DMs, you could cold call, you could door knock or something like that. Those are all ways to generate traffic onto your business. So that would be most likely the next constraint for someone who's just starting out the business. After you figure out the traffic, you're going to get sales calls. So these people that you're jumping onto calls with, your next constraint is going to be sales, right? Especially for people who don't have that much experience taking sales calls, this or that. They're most likely going to struggle with sales, at least in the beginning, because the constraint is now sales, right? So the reason I explain it like this is because at every stage, you're just progressing through this system. You're going to look at these as bottlenecks. You're going to ask yourself questions as to why, how it is stopping you from getting to that next level, and you're kind of going to solve it. So, obviously, I just explained it at a high level. Do you guys have any questions about this part so far? Okay, you guys are good. And if you guys do have questions, you guys could unmute and ask me at any time. Just interrupt me, right? So I think the best way to explain it, so I put together this lucid chart, is as an example. So I tried to build, when I was building this out yesterday, I tried to look at it from a systems point of view, right? And obviously, in terms of systems, there's a couple different ways to do it. Obviously, building a system can mean a bunch of different things, right? It could mean hiring people. It can mean using some form of automations. It can mean the overall strategy. It can mean a lot of different things. So for some of you guys here who are between this stage of $0 to $10,000, the number one thing, because I talk about this a lot, but the number one thing you just need to think about is traffic. So most people, right, again, right, when you're at zero, you're stuck on the offer part because you just don't know that much about how much to sell your service for, how to sell your service, how to position it, and how to generate traffic, how to the marketing side of the business, right? How to just get a lot of eyeballs onto your business. But for people who are at 0 to 10K, really the only thing you need to think about is the offer and marketing, at least from the perspective of getting to 10K, right? Obviously, once you get clients, you're still going to deliver for those clients. But the number one constraint is going to be offer and marketing. And once you figure that out, again, right, it'll be sales, onboarding, and service delivery, right? So when you're at 0 to 10K, more likely than not, in terms of the offer, you're probably going to be positioning your service as a setup fee. So that setup fee is probably going to be somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000, somewhere in that range. And you're most likely going to be doing a pay per call model, right? $200 to $300 per call. And you're probably going to need a guarantee, because when you don't have case studies, you're just going to need a guarantee. Because if you really think about what you're doing when you're first starting out and you do not have case studies, you're essentially approaching random people on the internet, these random business owners, and you're saying, hey, could you send me $2,000? But I don't really have proof that this works. You just gotta trust the process and hope that it works after you send me 2K. That's essentially what we're doing if you're starting out at zero. So as a result, you're most likely going to need some form of guarantee, because most people are just not going to send $2,000, $3,000 without any form of risk reversal on their end. That would be the offer. And if you're able to figure out these three things, I know I just put the answers here, but this would be the offer, and then obviously the niche, right? In terms of marketing, it's going to be you sending cold emails, at least in the beginning. If you're able to send 1,000 emails, 1,500 emails, 2,000 emails a day, that's a pretty large amount of volume, and you're going to be able to solve that traffic problem really easily. The VSLs or sales assets. So I know Arthur was talking about that. It could be either or, because what that VSL does, what that sales asset does, is it does two things. The first thing it does is it shows credibility, because assuming you're not, you don't just send a video, or you don't send a Google Docs with a bunch of BS in it, people, if they find value in it, they'll automatically be like, this guy knows what they're talking about, especially if it's relevant towards the people that you're sending towards. So that's the first thing. It does credibility. And the second thing is it builds trust with people, because obviously, we're all on the internet, and I don't think I personally met any of you guys. So who knows, right? Maybe I'm fake or something like that, right? But that's the purpose of the video, because if you're able to talk, if you're able to ideally show your face, it builds a lot of trust with these random people who just don't know who you are, right? In terms of marketing, you're going to be sending emails. People are going to be replying back to you. Obviously, you're going to be replying back to those people. You're probably going to be setting up your cold email infrastructure yourself. So setting up the domains, the email accounts, all of that stuff. And you're probably going to be scraping your own leads. And you're ideally going to aim towards setting up a marketing system, a cold email system that generates you somewhere between 10 and 20 calls every single month, right? So that's somewhere between 3 and 5 calls a week, basically, right? And if you're able to do that, you're probably going to be relatively easily going to be at 10K per month. Sales, in terms of the system, you're probably going to be taking your own sales calls, at least in the beginning. Onboarding, you're going to be onboarding the clients by yourself. And in terms of service delivery, you're going to be doing that yourself, right? So you're going to be setting up all the email accounts, all the domains by yourself. You're going to be replying back to all of your clients' emails by yourself, scraping all the leads. You're going to be basically doing everything by yourself in the beginning. But the main bottleneck is going to be offer and marketing. So that's what I mean when you're at 0 to 10K, right? But the reason why I say this is kind of like a flywheel and it never really stops is because as you, let's say you're at 10K per month and you're trying to get to 30K per month, you're still going to be looking at your business from this point of view, because the systems that you built that got you to 10K per month is not going to be the same systems that allows you to get to 30K per month or 50K per month. So as an example, when you're going from 0 to 10K, you might need 10 to 20 calls a month. But when you're trying to get to 30K or 50K, the system that gets you 10 to 20 calls per month is not going to cut it, right? You're not going to get to 50K per month generating 15 calls a month. It's just not going to work. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to revisit that system that you previously built and make it better, essentially, right? Or optimize it or make it more efficient, whatever that case is. But what I'm trying to say is that system that you previously built is not going to get you to that next level. So when you're between 10 and 30K per month, your offer is probably still going to remain relatively similar, right? You're going to have setup plus performance. You might start looking into retainer. So charging a client, let's say $3,000 a month flat, as opposed to $2,000 setup one time plus $200 per call. You're probably going to have case studies. Yeah, Tony, I see you have a question.
Real quick on the 0 to 10K, what would be a good guarantee for the clients?
Yeah. So the thing with guarantees is there's a bunch of different types. A lot of people, when they think of guarantees, they think of a money back guarantee, but you don't even necessarily need that. Because if you really think about the pay per call model, in a way, there's a guarantee baked into that. Because obviously there's a setup fee, which you're going to be collecting upfront, but that setup fee is going to go towards setting up the actual infrastructure and paying you for your time to, press these buttons on Microsoft Admin Center and set everything up. But after that, if let's say you just don't get results for your clients or you get 0 calls, you're not going to get paid beyond that. So in a way, that's kind of a guarantee. Again, there's obviously the money back guarantees, like the refund stuff, which I don't personally recommend, because if let's say you're charging $2,000 setup fee and you're offering a money back guarantee, if it just doesn't work, you run into the risk of having to refund your clients and losing that entire 2K, but you may have spent maybe $500 or $1,000 of that $2,000 setting up the infrastructure. So you're actually going to be in the negatives. So there's a bunch of these different guarantees, but I think the pricing model, if you're doing a setup plus pay per call in by itself, is kind of a guarantee, if that makes sense, Tony.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just another question for the 10 to 20 calls, how many emails would you think needs to be sent out to generate that much book calls?
Yeah, it's very dependent on the specific industry. Generally, what I have seen is try to aim for at least or close to 1,500 per day, at least in the beginning. If you're sending 1,500 cold emails a day, you're doing it the right way with good deliverability, there's a very strong chance that you'll be booking a few meetings a week, at least a few meetings a week, right? So I'd say 1,500 as a generalized number. But obviously in the beginning, as you are first starting out, or let's say you're doing it for the first time, maybe you make some mistakes, or maybe you say kind of the wrong things, or your VSL isn't that good, or whatever the case is. What you'd probably want to be doing is using volume to offset the fact that a lot of the things that you're doing might not be the best. And then as you optimize those things, right? Like you have a VSL, your first VSL, maybe it's not that good. you'd be revisiting that and making that better. And obviously, as you make that better, it's gonna work better and it's gonna convert more people at a higher rate. But I'd say as a generalized number, around 1,500, I'd say.
Cool. Appreciate it.
For sure. Let me just check the chat. Uh, okay, cool. So we're gonna move on to 10 to 30K, right? So again, right? So when you're between 10 and 30K, where this means, aside from the specific revenue target of, let's say, 10K per month, what that probably means is you have a couple of clients. You might have 3 to 5 clients. What your number one priority would be is getting case studies, right? Because once you have a case study, you're going to be able to sell your offer without a guarantee. You're just going, because you have proof that it kind of just works. In terms of a marketing system that will allow you to, let's say, get to 30K per month, you're probably still going to be using cold emails, because I think cold emails is a very good channel that will easily take you from 0 to 50K per month, like pretty easily. You're still probably going to be leveraging the VSL and the sales asset. You might look into hiring an inbox manager, right? And this would be a system, because now you're building a system that allows you to be able to reply back to people without you needing to actually do it for 30 minutes every single day or an hour every single day. So you might want to start looking into hiring an inbox manager to reply back to emails. You might want to look into hiring a systems integrator to set up the cold emails, because obviously everyone here has went through the process of setting up domains and email accounts, and it could be pretty annoying, right? It's not that hard. It's just really annoying and really time consuming. And obviously down the line, if you're doing this for 5 clients, you might not have the time to set up all the email accounts for 5 different people. So you'd want to hire a virtual assistant or a systems integrator who would set up these domains and these email accounts. And then when you sign a client, basically you wouldn't have to set up the domains, you wouldn't have to set up the email accounts, you won't have to reply back to leads, right? You might also want to hire someone to scrape leads for you. So Pedro, I know one of your first questions for me was if I still do it. The answer is no, right? Because you'd be hiring someone to go on Apollo for you and scrape those leads. Or if you're using more intent-based ways, so you're scraping Indeed or you're scraping different directories, it's a very time-consuming process, but it's not really that hard. It doesn't, it's relatively simple. It just takes a lot of time. So you would be wanting to hire someone who could take that off your plate, and you're essentially buying back your time by paying someone else to do this for you. That would be the marketing systems that will get you from 10 to 30K, right? And again, right, you could probably still get by generating 10 to 20 calls per month, really dependent on your closing rate and how proficient you are at selling your service. But you're probably still good generating somewhere between 10 to 20 calls per month. That could easily get you to probably 30K per month, right? You're probably still taking your own sales calls. You're probably still onboarding clients yourself. In terms of service delivery, now you have a couple different people on your team. You have an inbox manager, you have a systems integrator, you have someone who scrapes leads for you. You would leverage their time to help you deliver results for your clients, because it's a very time-consuming process, right? But you're probably still going to be in charge of communicating with clients yourself, hopping on these calls, invoicing them. They ask you questions, you're probably still going to need to reply back to them. You're going to be responsible for billing and taking those client catch-up calls and stuff like that, right? But the service delivery itself is going to allow you to deliver for, let's say, 5 to 10 different clients. Pedro, you have a question?
Yeah, how do you hire a lead specialist? Like, where do you look for him, her? Yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. So I think when it comes down to hiring, there's 2 approaches you could go for. You could hire someone who has done something similar in the past, but obviously, so basically they understand how it works, right? And maybe they used Apollo before, or they used LinkedIn Sales Navigator before, or Zoom Info before. So they understand how it works, but obviously you'd be paying them more money. Or you could hire someone who's just never done this before, and you'd be training them up. And obviously you wouldn't need to pay them as much, but it might be more work from your end, or it might cause more annoyances on a day-to-day basis, at least in the beginning, right? What I have always done for example, for systems integrators and lead specialists, because those are people who deal with the softwares, I tend to hire people who have done it before, but I'm not like hiring like a seasoned pro who's done it for like 5 years. I'm hiring someone who has some form of experience from it, and I train them up with my own SOP. So for example, for the lead specialist, I like to hire off off of Upwork where I make a job post with the keyword lead scraper or lead generator in the title. And there's a lot of people who have experience with that, and I hire someone for somewhere between $5 and $10 an hour, and I train them up using my internal process. And obviously, they have some experience with some other tools that could be combined with my own strategies. But that's how I do it, basically.
And you also teach them to like clean up the list and everything, right?
Exactly. So like, for example, formatting the company names, stuff like that. Or after you have all of that stuff and you're uploading the leads to Million Verifier, I think the process of uploading it to Million Verifier takes a while, right? Because it takes, depending on the lead size, it might take like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. They are doing that. And then once that is done, they would download it and upload it into Smart Lead, essentially.
All right, thanks, Jimmy.
For sure, Pedro. Cool. So that would be kind of like the system. So the systems that you had from 0 to 10K, it's similar, but you're making optimizations. The main optimizations in this specific case is hiring different people, right? That would be 10 to 30K. Let's say you're trying to go from 30K to 50K, or you're at 50K and you're trying to go to 100K. I think this is where a lot of the systems kind of need to be revamped, because I think as a whole, what you've done to get from 0 to 30K is completely different from what's going to get you to 100K. I think the best way to explain it is, for example, the offer that we used to go from 0 to 30K is not going to work for, going from 50 to 100K. It's just not going to work. You're probably going to have to move away from setup plus pay per call, because it's just not high ticket enough. And the only way you're at 50K per month or 100K per month, 60K, 70K, 80K is because you're charging a client very like mid thousands of dollars, right? You're not charging them $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month, because that would mean you'll have like 40 clients. And it's very hard to work with 40 clients at the exact same time. You'd be running around inside your business, right? So the offer that you would use is you would probably need to focus on retainers plus revenue share. That's where I'm at inside my business. Most of my clients for my agency side are a flat retainer plus revenue share, right? A flat retainer is somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000 a month, right? Because if you're charging a guy or a client $6,000, $7,000 a month, it scales to 50K per month, but you're not going to scale to 50K per month charging a guy $1,500 a month, right? So that's what I mean by the offer that you use from 0 to 30K is kind of different. You're going to have case studies. If you're at 50K per month, you need to leverage them, right? And again, more likely than not, you're going to need to be charging somewhere between 3 and 10K per month per client in order to get to that level. In terms of marketing, right? If you think about 0 to 30K, we were able to get by strictly sending cold emails. Sending 1,000 emails, 1,500, 2,000 cold emails a day, you're probably good, right? But after you get to, let's say, 50K per month, more likely than not, you're going to need more than one channel, right? Because after a while, you're going to exhaust a single channel, and you're going to have to start pairing it up. So for example, what I'm doing is I'm using cold emails, but I'm also pairing it up with organic stuff. So for example, my YouTube channel, right? It generates a lot of leads, but I'm also looking to get into ads, right? Start running ads for my business, because generating 10 to 20 calls per month is not enough. It's just straight up not enough to get to 50K per month, right? So I'm building systems, the marketing systems that will allow me to generate 30 to 50 calls a week, because that's the numbers that you will need in order to get to 50 to 100K per month, right? So the best way to do that as a system is look into other channels to pair on top of cold emails, right? Again, you still have the inbox manager, you still have the person who sets up all the domains and the email accounts. You're still going to have the person who scrapes the leads for you, right? Those are the same people that you've had at, I don't know, let's say 30K per month. As a sales system, more likely than not, you're probably going to have a closer or a salesperson, because taking sales calls could take a lot of time, especially if you're setting up these sales calls for 40 minutes or an hour on your calendar and you're generating 5 calls a day, right? That's 5 hours that, as you're taking the sales calls yourself, you're not going to be able to focus on delivering for your clients or growing the actual business. So as a system, you're going to hire a salesperson to take these calls, and they might be better than you, Ashley. I think my own salesperson is pretty similar to me, which is pretty good, right? And that gives me the freedom to know that as I'm generating these calls, he's not just like bombing on these calls, right? And doing like a poor job and stuff like that. And more importantly, what that does is allows me to buy back my time, because now I know that my time could be spent throughout the day doing other stuff, right? Focusing on how to deliver for my clients, learning new things, learning new strategies, focusing on taking my business to the next level. But I simply wouldn't be able to do that if I was taking 6 calls a day for 6 hours back to back to back, because I'd be exhausted by the end of it, right? In terms of onboarding and just working with clients, you're probably going to be looking into hiring a CSM, a client success manager or account manager. There's different names for that specific title, but essentially that's the person who might be taking the onboarding calls for your clients, right? So when you sign a client and they are meeting with you for the first time, you probably don't want to be doing that long term, because it's important, but it's not that important, right? Because what that call does is it gives you the opportunity to understand your client's business and give expectations and timelines for your service, and all of those things, right? So you're probably going to have a CSM, a client success manager, who does that. Service delivery, I think this is the system that will require the most work, or you'll be revamping it the most, because at scale, if you're working with, let's say, 10 clients, 15 clients, you can't be doing everything yourself or a lot of things yourself. You just, at this level, you need other people to be, you need to be leveraging other people's time, essentially, right? So you have the systems integrator to set up the cold emails. You have inbox managers, someone who scrapes leads. You have the CSM who communicates with the clients, who takes care of billing. You might want to hire a copywriter, so someone who writes cold emails. I know everyone on this call is writing their own cold emails. You might want to hire someone who writes those cold emails for you. And mainly what you'd be doing in the business is you'd be overlooking the overall strategy, the growth of your business, making sure your clients are getting good results, and hiring people. I think that's what I spend a lot of time right now doing, is just deciding and figuring out who do I need to hire that will allow me to get to the next level, right? And really the service delivery systems that will allow you to deliver results at scale for 10 to 30 clients, right? So that's pretty much the presentation. I don't know if you guys have any questions, or if this makes sense, or if it was kind of straightforward. But hopefully you guys see what I mean by, at every stage of the business, you're always just focusing on these 6 things. And you're going to be looking at it and figuring out, what do you need to figure out that will unlock that next level of growth? And then you're going to work through that process. And then you're going to go from 0 to 10K. And at 10K, you're going to ask yourself the exact same question again. I'm at 10K. What do I need to unlock that next level to get me to 30K, to get me to 50K? And you're always just revamping the business. And that's what I realized is what people mean when they say, I'm growing my business, I'm scaling my business. What they're really doing is they're focusing on these things, these 6 things, or really 5 things, because feedback's not really one of the systems, but they're focusing on these 5 things and building systems that make that process more efficient, if that makes sense.
Wow, that was amazing, actually. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, Pedro. Nelson, I know you have a question.
Yeah, quick question. So once you hire your VAs, do you give them like credit cards to purchase all the leads and the email accounts? How does it work?
Good question. The answer is no, I do not. So because you're hiring VAs, right? Okay, I think a lot of it comes down to trust, but I wouldn't necessarily trust VAs, especially people that you're just hiring for the first time with that type of stuff, because you never know, right? People could be malicious with it. So with that being said, for example, let's say I onboard a client and I'm setting up 10 domains and 30 email accounts. What I do is I go inside Porkbun and I buy the domains and I buy the Microsoft subscription licenses. I'm not setting them up. I'm just buying it. It takes me like, right? I'd be buying the actual Smart Lead account, but I wouldn't be giving them the credit card details, basically.
I see. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, I think you had a question too, right?
I was just applauding the presentation, but I do so I just started the program. Is there any things is there stuff that you see that set people back and other actions that set them forward when they join the program?
Yeah, I think the number one thing. Okay, so when you're starting out, right, you're in that phase from 0 to 10K. I think the biggest thing is just thinking about traffic, because obviously there's like the specific things to do, which is like, I don't know, setting up email accounts, building the VSL. But what that really is just part of the offer and the marketing systems, right? How do you generate traffic? And like, even for example, the VSL, that's a very specific thing to do. But the purpose of that is to help you just generate traffic and to help you generate attention and to build trust with people. I think the biggest thing that sets people back, I think this is kind of unrelated, but I think the biggest thing that sets people back is just taking a long time to do these things, taking just way longer than it needs to. Because I think a lot of these things, right, setting up the email accounts, the VSL, even writing the scripts, scraping leads, they're all things that could, if you work really efficiently and you actually have the time, you could probably do all of those things within the first week, basically, right? But obviously, people have other things going on, family, work, stuff like that, and it might not always be possible. But I think doing all of those things in the first 14 days will give you a really good chance, will give you the best chance really at succeeding and getting your first few clients, ASAP.
Got it.
For sure. Do any of you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, in terms of like automating the process, sorry, I get my camera right here. Yeah, in terms of like automating some of these systems and processes that you're talking about, with AI automation with make.com and whatnot, have you looked into like automating some of these steps? Because I feel like hiring, like I got a guy who's lead scraping and stuff for me, but there's some things like that where you can't automate it very easily. But I feel like some of these other aspects, like for example, there's for the inbox management stuff, there's AI that can now basically, respond to, basically follow a playbook that you set for it and then respond. Are you looking into like automating parts of your business so that you don't have to rely on human resources, so to speak, as much?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in this specific business, what I realized about using tools like Zapier and make.com is it's really good for repeatable processes that rely on different software. So for example, for my own business, a lot of automations, for example, is like onboarding and reporting, because that's a very simple process to automate. So for example, reporting, you're pulling data from, let's say, your Smart Lead campaign and putting it on a Google Sheet that will allow you to, as the business owner, as the CEO of the business, you just look at that Google Sheet and you see, oh, this campaign is at this open rate, this campaign is struggling with this, right? And onboarding. What I found is, to answer your question, Travis, about the inbox management, I have played around with it. I know there's AI tools as well that, for example, even on Smartly, I know it instantly has it, but I know there's like the AI sentiments where you're emailing these people, and if someone says not interested, it will by default automatically mark that reply as not interested. What I have found is it works, but it's not super accurate. And if they are automatically replying back to people, I think there's an element of it. So the reason I have an inbox manager is because when I'm sending these emails and people are replying back, what I have found is people can kind of sniff if it's a template, right? Like they can sniff that from a mile away. And oftentimes people, when they ask a question, or let's say they're interested in seeing the VSL, they pair it with another question. And if you kind of just like ignore that altogether, then it just sounds like a template as a whole, and it just doesn't convert as well, which is why I have an inbox manager who, the way it works is, let's say someone says, yeah, I'm interested in seeing the video. When I reply back, or my inbox manager replies back, they write like a small personalized line in the beginning, but then they use the overall template, which is obviously sending the VSL and the call to action, which is to book a call. But that's what I found works really well as a balance, right? I think a lot of these is just balance and how you want to operate it, but that's what I found works really well for me.
What about maybe onboarding and things like that? So you receive an invoice from Stripe or whatever, that you need to obviously send like an email. You need to send, an onboarding email. You need to perhaps automatically schedule in Calendly for the onboarding call or whatever. Instead of having to like do all that kind of administrative stuff, manually, you would want to automate that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
If possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So specifically for the onboarding, I'm trying to think because it's been a while since I looked at the specific automation I've set up. But I think what I have is, so I use esignatures.io to sign the contract. And every single time there's a new person who signs the agreement, it pulls their email from, obviously I'm sending this agreement to the email, or my salesperson is. It pulls that email address and it sends them an automatic onboarding email. Hey, Travis, I'm very excited to work with you at salesway.io, blah, 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 blah. A little bit of information. It sends, as part of that onboarding email, it has the Google Forms to collect the information. And the bottom of that email, the call to action, is to set up the onboarding call. That's the first automation. I know I have automations set up for more so like my internal. So I use Discord internally for my business with like all my other team members and stuff like that. It pulls notifications. So for example, someone signs the agreement, there's a channel that I have set up on Discord where it pings all the people, the relevant people inside my business that says, new client on board, congrats. So something like that, right? So a lot of reporting stuff.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
For sure. For sure.